In the Ace Attorney series, it's mentioned that a defense attorney's job is to believe in people, and to believe until the bitter end. However, the characters in these games can subvert previous expectations and be much different than initially believed. Hey guys, I'm Brad from One Up Binge, and this is Ace Attorney Characters, Good to Evil. The rules. Since this series has several games, we'll only be focusing on the main games and not spin-offs. Also, with this series having several characters, this list will focus on main characters as well as those who are recurring or integral to certain in-game plotlines. Finally, we're issuing a spoiler warning, as several of our characters have very plot-important details. With all that being said, we're starting with those on the side of justice. These are the good characters. Our gold medal of good goes to Misty Faye. Misty is the mother of Mia and Maya Faye. This mystic was a well-renowned spirit channeler. In Turnabout Goodbyes, it's revealed that Misty used her power in the DL6 case to help determine Gregory Edgeworth's murderer. However, she was forced to go into hiding when her use of channeling was leaked to the public. Misty returned and bridged to the Turnabout in secret in an attempt to thwart Maya's murder through spirit channeling. She sacrificed herself to save her youngest daughter. Like mother, like daughter, our second place goes to Mia Faye. Mia is introduced as the mentor to Phoenix Wright, constantly reminding him that a lawyer never gives up, always believes in their client, and to smile at their lowest points. She had a rough start in court, but was able to work through her fears to pursue the truth. It's this pursuit that unfortunately caused her to be murdered. Despite her death, Mia would make appearances here and there through the means of spirit channeling to help guide Phoenix whenever he seemed to get stuck. Third place goes to our main protagonist, Phoenix Wright. Phoenix starts his career as a fledgling lawyer under Mia's wing, and slowly grows into a confident leader of his own law office. He had the desire to become a lawyer as a child, when two of his childhood friends stood up for him and wanted to repay the favor to them. Phoenix almost always believes in finding the truth, but has shown that he's unfortunately no stranger to presenting forged evidence, whether he's aware of it or not. This caused him to be stripped of his attorney's badge for several years, but he was eventually able to work and be reinstated. He ended up taking on Trixia as his own daughter after her father died, and treats the mentees in his office as his own children. Phoenix is also responsible for helping the kingdom of Goran abandon the court's policy of those who support criminals will be deemed just as guilty and return to their former accurate legal state. Next is Athena Sykes. Athena joins the Wright & Co. law offices when Phoenix discovers her ability to tap into people's emotions whilst he traveled abroad. Athena has special hearing that allows her to hear hidden emotions in a person's heart, and a device to help determine inconsistent emotions within witness testimony. Athena uses these to help determine the true meanings behind testimony. She became a lawyer with the desire to save someone she knew who was wrongfully imprisoned. Athena often falls victim to doubts about her abilities, but she always has someone to reassure her that she's doing the right thing. Apollo Justice is next. Apollo is another fledgling lawyer for Wright & Co. He brings his ability to perceive the smallest ticks and tells that people give off when they talk. He's able to pinpoint these tells and have people open up to him about the truths they were hiding. Apollo often psychs up himself and others by repeating a mantra of "I'm fine" in order to raise spirits. However, Apollo can be somewhat of a downer at times, finding little interest in activities or flat out refusing to do things. His trust for Athena was briefly tested when she's a potential suspect in the murder of his best friend, but he ultimately relies on her to show him the truth so that his doubt can be cleared. Maya Faye is next. Maya briefly works alongside Phoenix as his co-counsel after Mia is murdered and proves to be a reliable asset. She lends him her Magatama so he can discover the truth, and occasionally channels Mia whenever the two of them seem to be stuck. Maya is very childish when she's introduced, but grows into a responsible adult with a fun side. Maya is also unfortunately a magnet for trouble, as she's been accused of murder a handful of times and has gotten herself in contempt of court in order to stall for time. In the end, Maya's heart is always in the right place. Next is Trixia Wright. Trixia is adopted by Phoenix when her father goes missing and eventually is discovered to be dead. She has a penchant for magic, having grown up with a family of magicians, and wants nothing more than to delight her audiences. She cares about the lawyers in her father's office and the magician she works with. We now have Detective Dick Gumshoe. Gumshoe's initially not willing to share information with Phoenix as he works for the prosecution, but is easily swayed to reveal it. He eventually opens and becomes a good friend to Wright & Co. The constant slipping of information often results in punishment, but he deals with it in a similar pursuit of truth. He cares about his former fellow officer Maggie, and in one case, was willing to break traffic laws in order to get evidence to the courtroom as fast as possible. He may not be the smartest, but Gumshoe has a heart of gold. Next is Pearl Fay. We first meet Pearl as a small child, initially wary of Phoenix until she believes him to be Maya's special someone. During reunion and turnabout, Pearl often assists Phoenix in helping him find evidence for the trial, as she's very familiar with the setting it takes place in. Pearl cares deeply for her cousin Maya, as well as her mother, Morgan Fay. In a couple instances in the series, Pearl follows orders on behalf of Morgan, falling for her lie of the task being for the good of the Fay clan. She's too young initially to understand the nefarious ideals of her mother, but wants to be an obedient daughter nonetheless. When her mother is jailed, she forms a stronger bond with Maya, as she's her only family, and begins to bond more with Phoenix. Pearl also comes under fire for lying to Phoenix about her involvement in the cases, usually wanting to hide the embarrassment of whatever she's done. She, unfortunately, doesn't grow out of this habit, showing that she's still childish. Next, we have Miles Edgeworth. We first learned that Edgeworth would stop at nothing to achieve a guilty verdict in every case he was put onto. Some rumors even spread that he was guilty of using falsified evidence. Phoenix is initially surprised to hear of Edgeworth in this state, as he was one of the friends that stood up for him and inspired him to go into law school in the first place. Like Phoenix, Miles was taken under Manfred Von Karma's wing after the passing of his father, and as such, was corrupted into the heartless prosecutor that he was initially believed to be. Miles eventually softens due to Phoenix's influence, as well as the discovery of his father's murderer. He eventually becomes more receptive to others and moves from being a rival to being a true friend to Phoenix. Following him, we have Larry Butts. Like Edgeworth, Larry's another one of Phoenix's friends who stood up for him. However, Larry was a magnet for getting into trouble. As it's said in the game, when something smells, it's usually the butts. Larry was accused of killing his girlfriend Cindy in the very first case of the series. He's also a consistent nuisance to both Phoenix and Miles whenever they try to extract what information he knows about the cases he's involved in. Rounding out the category, we have Princess Rafa. She's the daughter of the reigning queen. Rafa is also the priestess responsible for performing the divination seance, an act that is able to display what occurred in a victim's final moments as well as any sensations that occurred. Rafa is initially aloof and has a hatred for Phoenix whenever he would prove that her seances weren't correct. Phoenix is able to sway her mind when he tells her that she needs to view her seances as a step to finding the truth and not being absolute. In the end, Rafa eventually rebels against the regime and Quran. Next, we move into the characters who can tip the scales one direction or the other, but not with clear enough intention. This is the gray area. Starting off the section, we have Detective Emma Skye. She is a brief companion alongside Phoenix in Rise from the Ashes. Emma really comes to prominence in Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Having failed to qualify as a forensic investigator, she filled her time as a homicide detective instead. This, alongside hearing of Wright's disbarring and working under a narcissistic prosecutor, causes her to be very standoffish towards Apollo in that game. She constantly complains about her job and spends most of her time snacking to calm herself. Emma eventually secures her dream job 2 years after the events of the last case in Apollo Justice and learns of Phoenix's return to the courtroom, allowing herself to warm up to the lawyers at Wright & Co. Following her, we have Clavier Gavin. Due to the influence from his older brother, Kristoff, Clavier went into his first trial assuming Phoenix to be a fake, having received a warning about the lawyer planning to present falsified evidence. This then brought about Phoenix's disbarment for several years, with Clavier only being 17 at the time of this feat. Throughout Apollo Justice, Clavier is the main prosecutor that Apollo faces off against in court. Clavier wanted to see how good the fledgling lawyer was after being responsible for putting Kristoff in jail. More on him later. Clavier doesn't see Apollo as a rival at all, and is very chill towards him, as well as many others. Next, we have Godot, formerly known as Diego Armando. This lawyer stood by Mia Fey's side in her very first trial as her mentor and co-counsel. He urged the young woman to not lose hope in her defense and continue the attack against the believed killer. However, when their defendant died by suicidal poisoning, Diego was upset, but took it upon himself to investigate further. He interviewed the believed perpetrator of the crime, but was poisoned himself and fell into a coma. When he awoke from his coma, Diego learned of Mia's murder that had occurred 2 years prior. He placed the blame upon Phoenix for not protecting Mia and thus swore to protect Maya no matter the cost. He then abandoned his old life as Diego, the defense attorney, and became Godot, the prosecutor. In court with Phoenix, Godot, for the most part, keeps his cool, but occasionally shows his frustration with the lawyer by mispronouncing his name and/or throwing a cup of coffee at him. Godot isn't able to drop his distaste for Wright until he's able to see how Mia's spirit influenced Phoenix into the lawyer he became. Next is Franziska Von Karma. This young woman became a prosecutor at the age of 13 whilst abroad. She followed in similar footsteps to her father, trying for a guilty verdict every time. She doesn't take her first defeat in court well and claims it was a fluke when she went up against Phoenix. Franziska is unfortunately also known to whip anyone who dares challenge her arguments or say something foolish in her presence. Despite these things, Franziska is portrayed as a reliable resource. When Detective Gumshoe gets into a car crash while trying to bring important evidence to the courthouse, Franziska tracks him down and delivers it just in time. Franziska helped assist as an acting prosecutor, as well as an aide in removing locks from the door in the inner sanctum and bridge to the turnabout. Our final prosecutor is Simon Blackwell. In the early days of his career as a prosecutor, Simon decided to learn about analytic psychology from his mentor and Athena's mother, in order to get an advantage in court. He also pursued a spy, known only as the Phantom, and worked with Menace in order to build a psychological profile for them. However, when he discovered Menace to have been murdered and saw young Athena covered in blood, he took it upon himself to protect her, fearing she had been responsible. He did his best to dispose of evidence, but ended up being accused of being the killer due to being caught by multiple cameras. He chose to plead guilty to protect Athena and the psych profile that was created, despite Athena trying to plead to everyone that he was innocent. Simon eventually came back to the courtroom because of Edgeworth's influence as chief prosecutor, but was assigned a detective to keep the Twisted Samurai in check. Simon is able to use his methods of suggestion to coerce defendants, witnesses, and even lawyers to say what needs to be said in order for the case to fall in the prosecution's favor. During Turnabout for Tomorrow, the entire team was able to determine Metis Sykes' true killer and are able to overturn Simon's guilty verdict, freeing him and saving him from execution. After that, Simon continues to be a supportive force for Athena, knowing that she intended to save him from his guilty verdict when she decided to become a lawyer. Next, we have Dirk Sadmati. He's the leader of a rebel group called the Defiant Dragons. Dirk initially used to be a well-renowned lawyer who was married to Queen Amara of the Kingdom of Corian. However, when he was accused of arson and murder of the queen, he attempted to defend himself in court. When he was accused of forging evidence, Dirk was subsequently forced to go into hiding. During this time on the run, he adopted Apollo Justice as his son and began to form the Defiant Dragons to rebel against the Goran regime. When Maya is taken hostage by the Minister of Justice, Dirk rushes to rescue her, but is shot to death. He then asks Maya to channel him once he passes, so that she can escape captivity and allow him one last visit with Apollo. When he retrieves the Founder's Orb for the hostage exchange, he's believed to have murdered Inga afterwards. During this trial is where Apollo learns of Maya's channeling of Dirk, as well as former Queen Amara's channeling of him as well, setting into motion the events that would finally strike down the Goran regime and allow lawyers to be once again respected in the kingdom. Next is the Judge. Presiding over almost every case that we play throughout the series, the Judge is a sprightly man and takes his job very seriously. He unfortunately can get distracted or manipulated easily, but can be brought back to focus if his age or ability is called into question. The Judge is fair in his decisions when calling a recess for events to settle down, or if the trial needs to close for the day so that further investigation can be done. In the end, the Judge makes the right decision every time. Now we have Nayuta Sadmati. Like his father, Nayuta desired to become a prosecutor and help to overturn the Goran regime. However, Queen Goran was able to manipulate him by revealing that his mother Amara was still alive and that Princess Rafa was his younger sister. This information was used as leverage against him in order to keep him quiet and kept at bay. So, he abandoned his revolutionary ideals in order to protect his family. Nayuta is initially aloof towards those he faces in court and tries to encourage them to turn away from their ideals. He often throws his prayer beads at his opponents and causes them to constrict, inflicting crushing pressure. When he finds out about the truth about the attempted assassination of his mother, Nayuta rebels against Queen Goran and declares himself to be a member of the Defiant Dragons. Our next entrant is Lada Hart. This recurring country girl shows up in multiple cases cases, primarily as a photographic witness to the crimes that occur. Lada is not willing to part with what evidence she has unless Phoenix is willing to give her something in return, usually evidence related to a separate event or bout of gossip that's happening at the same time as the murder. Lada also will occasionally take the stand as an eyewitness, but proves through cross-examination that most of the time, she never actually saw anything or saw something completely different than what was testified. The photos she takes in the crimes are usually pretty helpful, but not entirely definitive as proof. Lada is willing to help the investigation, but for a price. The final character for this category, we have Wendy Oldbag. This elderly lady is similar to our previous entrant, in which she's a recurring witness. She also will oftentimes have important information that she's not willing to part with. This information you either have to force out of her or trick her into revealing. However, Oldbag is one of the worst witnesses, usually not having seen anything and just wasting everybody's time in court. Wendy desires the truth, but forces us through the ringer and back to even make progress. Finally, we come to those who prove that the only sense of justice that matters is their own. These are the bad. At the top of this section is Morgan Fay. Morgan was planned to become the next master of the Korean channeling technique, but was usurped by her sister when she showed a stronger level of power. She was looked down upon by those in her village, and thus, this event was a catalyst for her plot for revenge. Morgan attempted to have her daughter Pearl take over as the master on 2 different occasions. The first was where Morgan was an accomplice to the murder in an attempt to frame Maya for it. The second attempt was during Bridge to the Turnabout, where she planned to have Maya framed for murdering Misty. She was able to orchestrate this plan from behind the scenes, in a ploy to have Pearl ascend as a potential for becoming the master. Morgan is ruthless and soulless, caring only about her own gain. Following her is Kristoff Gavin. Kristoff was initially the mentor to Apollo Justice, speaking highly of his capabilities to his younger brother, Clavier. We discover through the events of Apollo Justice that Kristoff is a heartless criminal underneath this cool lawyer persona. He was responsible for the death of Shadi Smith, aka Zach Gramerier, who is Trucy's real father, and attempted to pin the crime on Phoenix. Apollo was able to prove Gavin guilty of the crime and was sentenced to jail. During his time in jail and the testing of a new judicial system, it's discovered that Kristoff had attempted to poison a forgery artist named Vera Misham via the back of a stamp and a bottle of nail polish. Her father used the poison stamp and subsequently died. Vera almost fell victim to the poisoning due to her nail-biting habit, but survived. Next is Manfred Von Karma. The prosecutor, who always gets a guilty verdict, only once had his record broken by Gregory Edgeworth. When he came across a lawyer passed out in the elevator due to a power outage, he took it upon himself to kill Gregory as revenge for his record. He later was also responsible for murdering the defense attorney in Gregory's murder trial. Finally, when Phoenix and Maya discover Von Karma manipulating evidence in the records room, he tases both of them. Our bronze medal of evil goes to Bobby Fulbright. This detective is easily manipulated into helping the defense throughout Dual Destinies, but we later discover that he's a spy sought by Simon. He's responsible for murdering Apollo's friend, Athena's mother, the 2 bombings at the Space Center, and the bombing of one of the courtrooms. His life has caused him to lose all sense of his identity and humanity. The silver medal of evil goes to Dahlia Hawthorne. This young woman showed that from a young age, she was a cold and heartless person. She staged a kidnapping at 14 to run away with the ransom. At 19, she killed her older sister and coerced her lover to commit suicide via poisoning. She poisoned Diego to prevent him from learning the truth, and tried to get Phoenix framed for the murder of her ex that she committed. During her time in jail, she met with Morgan and put a plan together to kill Maya. Pearl was to summon Dahlia after she was executed so that the young woman could kill Maya. However, this plan was somewhat thwarted as Misty was murdered by Dahlia instead. Finally, our gold medal of evil goes to Queen Goran. This queen was responsible for the attempted arson and murder of her sister and then tried to put it on Dirk. After this, she was enacted the DC Act, deeming lawyers to be as guilty as criminals. She took Amara hostage and used her as leverage to manipulate Nayuta into working for her. Goran also was responsible for the murder of her own husband when she learned he was trying to gain power to overthrow her. Finally, it's revealed that because she had no spiritual power, she had no real authority in the kingdom and was jailed. With the characters ranked, let's award some medals. The Darwin Medal goes to Detective Gumshoe. He doesn't make the best decisions, but his heart's always in the right place. The Pride medal goes to Manfred Von Karma. He only cares about his record and getting his guilty verdicts. The Sloth medal goes to Larry Butts. He often doesn't want to help with things when he could be useful. The Wrath medal also goes to Manfred Von Karma. He's so enraged at the breaking of his record to resort to murder. The Gluttony medal goes to Maya Fey. She's constantly wanting to go out and get burgers or noodles after cases are over. The Envy medal goes to Lotta Hart. Her goal is to be the best investigative journalist in the world. The Greed medal goes to Dahlia Hawthorne. She made off with the ransom and the kidnapping ploy she created. And the Lust medal goes to Larry Butts. He's got affections for almost every woman he comes across. Alright guys, that's it. Ace Attorney characters ranked from good to evil. Who do you think was the most evil character? Let us know by commenting down below. And if you need a one-up, make sure to hit that notification bell and binge our other gaming videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.